Okay. All right. So question 1, she had those scenarios. I asked higher order questions. Everybody on the document?
Yeah.
Can't see. I asked higher order questions of gifted students when we have whole class discussions. I have students complete the regular work and then I give them deeper thinking problems, and I have them do the same work as the other students but in more advanced level. Do you agree with these
No.
approaches?
I don't think they should be specifically asking higher order questions just to the gifted students.
Yeah, that seems.
If you're going to engage in like a class discussion with higher order questions, you should ask everybody. That shouldn't be differentiation.
Agreed.
Then you shouldn't give them deeper, like, where it says note more in this case, not different, which is, hello, no, don't give them more work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's still a big misconception that they need more work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you want them to like keep busy, so it's like just a knee-jerk reaction to say, okay, well now you can do this, well now you can do this, but then if you look at how much extra or how much work that is, did they need that much?
Yeah.
And I feel like giving them like early finishing work, like early finisher work for when they're done, I feel like is different than what this is saying. Because I feel like this is saying you have to do this plus this because you're gifted or whatever. Whereas I feel like early finisher work, like, okay, you're done, now you do this other assignment that like you're not like necessarily required to do, but can be like an extension.
Right. That they might be more excited about or interested in.
Yeah.
You mean like with giving them the contracts?
Yeah, just giving them something that's not here. Okay, you know, you're doing this reading, but since you're gifted, you have to do this sheet or this assignment too, in addition to that. That okay, your earlier finisher assignment could be working on this, you know, something that they're excited about.
Yeah.
So just like another sheet or something.
Yeah. Makes me think of the compactor again.
Yeah.
Something that.
We have the workshop model at our school, so it's kind of like gradual release, I guess, you know, and they will move out of a lesson quicker than other kids will, but they can move on to their contract type work for workshop.
Have them do the same work as the other students, but at a more advanced level. What do you think about that?
I think that there's definitely some part of that statement that I agree with, because I guess that's kind of the idea. Like a lot of times they are at an advanced level to begin with, so we just need to start them at a higher tier of lessons and work for them to do, instead of starting everybody at the bottom tier and then they just do more work while everybody else works their way up. I think for a lot of kids, they need to start on a more advanced level.
Yeah, true.
And that doing the pretest, that will come in handy so you know where to start your kid. Because I feel like, I mean, my kid compacted out of fractions, but I still have them doing some fraction stuff, but I had them doing like 4th and 5th grade level stuff, which they had cleared the 3rd grade stuff, but I still wanted it to be like that content related. So she was still doing fractions just like the rest of the class, but she was doing like higher level fractioning stuff.
Well, and I think for math, I mean, that lends itself for the math or whatever. I mean, you don't want to just, I mean, I understand sometimes they can go to that independent studies thing if you feel like they've had, you know, sufficient practice or whatever. But I mean, I shouldn't just like give them oh, you did those, so don't do any math, like, you know, especially with math. It just seems like they should still be building that math muscle.
Yeah, I did the same thing for my compacting with the fractions. So yeah, I still had them doing fractions, but it was just higher level and like kind of deeper thinking and applying it to more real world scenarios.
Yeah, and like we had the TD teacher came in and like I pulled a small group. This was a couple weeks ago. I pulled a small group of kids that like needed more like intensive help with fractions, and she like with the rest of the class did like they designed this town and like had to do like a sixth of your town had to be like living space, and then like all this other stuff. So it was like real world stuff for them. So they weren't just doing like learning fractions on number lines, because a lot of them already mastered that. So she was able to do like a real world like project, like, and they worked on it for like 2 weeks while I like was able to pull like a small group.
That's exactly what my compacted thing was. It was building community.
And they like loved it, and they asked me questions about it. I'm like, no, ask Miss Beatty, don't ask me. Like that's her deal. But I mean, it was just something like it was real world application of fractions. So I feel like and it was like definitely it was open. She had parameters, like I said, like 1 to 6 has to be living quarters, and like I don't remember all the details, but so there were parameters. But other than that, like they were able to do pretty much whatever they wanted. So they had like creativity and freedom while like still using fractions. So
Yeah,
that was cool. But that could be like an early finisher activity, you know, build a town with your fractions or something like.
Well, we all agree with that one then.
Yeah. All right.
What's the next question? How has your thinking, oh, go ahead.
How has your thinking changed now that you have worked to intentionally plan in advance of the lesson differentiated learning for gifted students? How does intentionally and planning change what you do for gifted students?
So what I wrote on the Google Doc was just basically, you know, I felt like the last 2 challenges were trial by fire, kind of, you know, the authentic problem one just completely wigged me out. I think because the directions were kind of wonky at first, but, you know, it was just like giving the pre-test. Like once I got in there and gave them, you know, the concept, and then we had the guidelines with the SEMTech and everything. Oh man, it was just awesome to see what they're really thinking some deep things. And, you know, I never really get to get in there and hear all their really cool thoughts. And so I don't know, I just had a good experience with it, both with the pre-test and this one.
I agree with what you just said about the challenge, because as we all know, I mean, I really didn't even know how to start with that. But then once we started filling out the form and talking about like, you know, his big question, in my opinion, is just like so big, because I don't think like that. So I don't tackle those kind of big projects. But you're right, like to think like where their mind can go. I mean, you know, the world to them really is still so very small, and they can take on the world, you know, in their little 4th and 5th grade minds. And I do wish that I understood the challenge a lot sooner than I did, because I would have liked to get other kids. I would have liked to hear what a lot of other kids had to say about it.
But I would like to hear what the kids say about each other's things. I think that would be cool, because just hearing from like the girl that I did, like, I was like, oh my gosh, like I would want the other kids to hear what they have to say, but hear what they say about each other's, and like maybe even have them like team up and do.
I have a sign up on my board that says that you're ready to talk about it. And so eventually, like during guided reading times, I'll be pulling them to, you know, to do that with other students. So eventually that would be great to circle up and kind of have a little mini think tank.
Yeah, that's cool.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, and I think just like talking about like intentionally planning for stuff, especially like, again, if you've given a pre-test, you should know like where your kids are at, because I feel like sometimes I'm teaching a lesson and the kids are like, oh, we already know this. And I'm like, oh crap, like let me try and make some. So then I gotta like kind of think on my feet and be like, okay, well, what about this? Have you guys learned this? And then what about this? And then kind of all over the place is trying to figure out what I'm trying to teach and what they already know. So I feel like pre-testing and figuring out what they already know about the topic before you teach it really makes it so you can meet their needs better. And so, okay, you know, they already know this. Okay, they already know about the denominator, the numerator. Let's teach them how to find like the greatest common factor, the greatest common denominator, whatever. What's the next skill that they can learn from going off of what they already know? So just, yeah, being really intentional, I think. Anytime, and I think that's not just with gifted students. I think that's period. Like if you take the time to be intentional about what you're teaching, it goes over a lot better than you just pulling stuff out your butt, which it happens all the time. But I feel like the more prepared you are, the more intentional you are, the better your lessons are going to go over, and you're going to be able to meet your kids' needs better than if you don't.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. And I think especially with the gifted kids, anticipating that they are going to know a good portion, I guess, of what you're teaching, or sometimes, I guess it depends on the situation, but just anticipating and kind of planning ahead in that way has made it a lot easier. Because doing the compactor, I wouldn't have realized that some of my students had already mastered fractions, even though I hadn't taught it.
Yeah.
Using that information and making the compactor before I started teaching fractions was really helpful, because then that kid didn't even really have to participate in many of the lessons. He was able to just go off and do what he needed to do. Because
What did you guys use for your pre-test? I mean, did you do this topic 8 assessment? Are you guys doing Envision?
Yeah, we are. But we had those snow days, and so it was hard for me to get time. And then right after that, we had something else. Oh, we had, we're doing a program called CASE benchmark assessments. Some Title I schools are doing it. And so I use that. It's like the questions are basically EOG questions on our benchmark. So we took that right after we got back from those snow days. And that was like 2 days before the compactor was due. So I used the data from that CASE assessment, because like almost half the test was fractions and I hadn't taught it yet. So I just used that information for my pre-test.
Where do y'all pull that? Is that from the district?
Yeah, it's from the district. It's like, I think some of the Title I schools are like doing like a trial run of this program called CASE. And it's really cool. I had used it at my previous school and I really like it. Teachers can go in and create their own assessments, and they're based on all the standards, and they're basically EOG type questions. So I don't know if the district is like thinking about getting it for the whole district or what, but I know there's certain Title I schools that are like trying it out this year, I guess.
You guys have SchoolNet?
Yes, we do.
I haven't used
Cool.
SchoolNet in a minute.
That. It seems like it's kind of like that.
You use Mastery Connect. Plus I have, yeah, that's like my favorite thing. I just get on there and like search the standard. I'm like,
I know, me too.
but we just used, like, I had tons of old fraction assessments that we've used, so I just used one of those. Good, this covers all the standards. Let's use it.
Well, if you're doing Envision, the district in Canvas, it says like all Math Rocks icon or whatever. And if you go in there by quarter and then by grade, it'll kick off the topic assessment. And then each question will have like if they got these questions wrong, it'll tell you what standard so it like just helps me specifically. And the information's all right there. So like if they miss those questions, then I know when I'm teaching that standard, those are the ones that I can compact them out of.
Yeah.
It's like super simple.
Do your schools make you follow Envision pretty strictly?
No, we purchased motivation math books that we use as well. I mean, we pretty much launched with it the way it was supposed to, and then we realized it doesn't have everything in there as any program. But are you guys real strict with it?
No. That's why I use it for some of the stuff, and other stuff I'm like, I have stuff that's better from like past years, like I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
We're not married to it, thankfully.
My school follows it pretty closely.
Your school does?
Yeah, but then it has other math resources that I use too. But I think like the Gen Ed, I think they pretty much follow it pretty closely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we use it, but we can go off it a little bit too. But we don't, our quizzes, assessments, anything like that is given to us. It's not something we can use stuff that we have or find or anything like that.
All right, are we good with our differentiation question? Or not different, or the intentional planning?
Did you ask if we were done?
Yeah, with that question.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
In what way are you thinking differently about how to serve gifted and talented students?
So I think something that I have learned about that is grouping the higher performing kids I don't have any certified gifted kids in my class, but I have 2 different blocks, and in both blocks I have a handful of high performing kids. So, after all the reading and discussions we've had, I've certainly started grouping those kids together more than not, because I know that they need the challenge that they can get from each other. They can get the higher order thinking that they need from each other, instead of being the high kid in every group and always having to do all the work for the whole group. So I know that it benefits some of the lower kids to have the high kids in the group, but for the most part, those high performing kids need to kind of brainstorm off of each other. So that's one thing I've taken, is I've started grouping them together more.
My whole class is grouped together by ability, just like in their teams for right now. And because the same thing that you just said, like certain kids end up doing all the work. So, I've got a group that were my EC certified, and a couple other kids that are in intervention or whatever. And it's just been awesome to see some of them emerge as like the leaders of the group, and, having them just be in charge of their own thinking more so than just like sitting back and letting everybody else do it for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just saying that I feel like with this differentiation piece with compacting and, doing this challenge, like I'm really trying to like be better about like letting go of control. I feel like, this is the classroom. I'm the teacher, you're the student. I'm going to teach, you're going to do this. When in reality, like, I'm going to be teaching some kids, but other kids are going to be working on their own stuff and working at their own pace. And that's why, like, I have a hard time with personalized learning too, because like the kids are all just like doing, I know it's good because they're doing like whatever they need, but like I'm like, okay, go and do it, I guess. Like, and being more of like a facilitator to their learning than a teacher is what, it's hard, but I guess I'm trying to be better about learning about like differentiation, because for the majority of kids, me sitting up there and talking is not what's going to meet their needs the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's kind of what I said too. Just because I'm used to having the lower students. And so I'm used to having more control and kind of prescribing, more of what they do. So letting go in that way has been a challenge, but also I can definitely see the benefits. And I think that is really what they need. So just giving them more freedom and choices. I think it's one of the biggest, differences in the way or I guess how I'm thinking differently.
Yeah.
It's funny how all of our answers are almost the same on the Google Doc.
Yeah.
Like, I try to write mine without looking at everybody's, and then I go and I read.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, it's like, oh wow, we all said the same thing. Anything more to add?
I don't think so. I think our last thing though is to just talk about what we did for our challenge, our contract. I did, because I know we've been texting about it, so I think I know about whatever all of yours did. But my girl, talking to her, she wanted to find a way, like, and I put on my write-up that like my essential question, because that's the broad one, yeah. The essential question was she wanted to find a way to make like food, like crops and livestock, or find a way to make food more healthy and affordable. That was her overall thing. And then her project question was how to make food more healthy by reducing like pesticides and like stuff, and how if you reduce that, like what are the alternatives and how to make it more affordable. So like we talked about like, my list of resources is pretty big. We talked about like movies she could watch, because there's like a ton of like Netflix documentaries out right now, and I don't really know how appropriate they are for like a third grader, so that'd probably be something we'd have to look at before she watch these movies. But like looking at like how pesticides like affect you, and like we talked about like the EPA, like FDA, like all these different things, and we talked about like what were some of the pesticides, what are some like what are the effects of people consuming them, and she made the point that there are healthy options, but most of them are only like in those rich grocery stores. So like what we would have to do, make them affordable for everyone, which I thought was like so random, but I'm like, okay, that's what she wants to talk about. And I just thought that the fact, okay, yeah, doing pesticides, that could be one thing. And then making food affordable could be one thing. But the fact that she like wanted to put them together, I felt was good in showing that she wanted to really like, she looked at it as like a more than one problem, you know, that it was like a bigger thing that she was trying to find the solution for.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, whenever we solve world hunger and pesticide issues in my classroom, that's what's going to happen. But so, and following that form, I feel like really gave me a lot of guidance. So
Yeah, for sure.
it wasn't as bad when I had that form. So thanks for having you, the real MVP there.
Yeah, that was super helpful.
Yeah.
Well, it was online, but I didn't realize. Josephine, who is also in the class, she was the one that told me that she Googled it and then you could actually manipulate it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really
thanks, Josephine.
Julie, did your girl do something about eels?
Yeah, it was
your boy, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. He's one that like never speaks. He's super quiet, and it's like pulling teeth anytime I want to like get him to respond to something. He normally just nods. And so actually sitting down and talking with him about these different questions, because he told me that he wanted to do, like when I asked him, he wanted to do a project about electric eels, and so we kind of just got to that topic. But it was really neat to be able to hear some of his ideas and actually hear him talk more than just a few words at a time, because he really had some great ideas and kind of took it in a really cool direction. So that was neat.
What was his question? I think you texted it, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, it was about using electricity as like a source of power. Like, is it possible to harness it, I guess, kind of, and use it as like an energy source? So I thought that was pretty neat.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so I had a good experience once I got started, but something I noted that was sort of a challenge is, and I'm trying really not hard not to be a pessimist about it, but I feel like that's the way I'm looking at it. Like, I just feel like the project is so big, you know, and I don't know if I'm looking at it the right way or if it should be so big, and so what I found challenging was trying to narrow him down to maybe a smaller idea without making it my project.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I really just ran with what he was saying because that was something that he wanted. And, you know, like his whole life is just sports and, you know, PE and this, that, and the other thing. So his was to design a magnet school with a physical education theme, which is awesome. But I think that was where I had the hardest time, was just like, you know, is this too big, and how much should I kind of zone him in a little bit without making all of these responses mine?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't. I mean, obviously I had to help him with resources and stuff because they don't have that. He's got access to the information, but of course he doesn't have access to it. You know, he doesn't know about it. So I did have to help him with that, but I just kind of rolled with what he was saying, and, you know, we'll see how it goes.
Well, my student, she was concerned that people were killing animals for sport and just like wasting, you know, all the parts of the animal that they didn't want to use. And so what did she say? She said, I have a problem with it. I like animals. I understand killing animals for food, but I don't understand about wasting a life. So her question was, I would like to discover if there's something that we can do to protect animal populations, people killing animals for sports, and could we at least not waste the meat part that they don't want. And so the essential big question was, how do we create safer environments for all species of animals? But so she was talking about, like, you know, can we donate the meat or the parts of the animals that they don't, is there any place? And I do happen to know from, from our bond party that we have rendering plants and things like that. So, but that was hard to not say to her, you know, without like making it too much my part of the project. I know what you're saying. But, you know, and we just kind of, since the project just started, I mean, like I gave her some of the Weinbrenner choice, or some of the like the product choices and the resource choices. So she was kind of just like listing different projects. I don't think she's narrowed it. We haven't narrowed it down. Not enough time to narrow it down for like what she's going to do for a final project. Yeah. So is that all the questions?
Yeah. I think so.
Stacy, I can't tell how much time we're at.
Well, we only have, it'll shut off in 7 minutes, so I can stop the recording if you guys want for now. Or.
Oh, you only have a certain amount of time?
Yeah, I guess. I didn't know that, but it just popped up, like, unless you want to upgrade, whoops.
I see it. It says remaining meeting time.
Yeah, so I guess you can pay to upgrade for more time, but.
That's fine. We don't need to.
Well, we already decided when we were going to meet and everything, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you could stop it.
Okay. I guess I just hit stop.